And with still a very productive 2025 for you, how did you assess the tipping point to say, okay, the career's in the books, time to go to the next chapter, and what do you have planned next?
I believe it's just a mentality thing, man. I played football, since I was 6 years old, and every year I had a mentality to just go out there and just, play the game and dominate and have fun with it. But once the season ended, that kind of mentality kind of like left me. It kind of like just me thinking to myself, okay, do I really, want to continue playing football or, just figure out what's next in my life? You know, you got my whole life is ahead of me and I'm just looking forward to the next, challenge and, finding my next passion. And, I bought myself enough time to be able to, figure that out. But, you know, um, I feel like, good things gonna be ahead.
In the 2012 draft, you heard your name called in round two. Barely had to change the shade of red, going from Nebraska to Tampa.
Right.
You put on that Bucks hat and you never take it off. You're with one career your entire time. What does it mean to you to have all pros plural, a Super Bowl ring, and do it with the same franchise for 14 years?
Man, I think it was destiny. I always said, God had a plan for me, and I just stuck with the plan, and He put me in this place. Going from Miami and going up to the Midwest to Kansas and then Nebraska. Being away from home, being out of Florida for the first time. God had a plan for me, and I just stuck with that plan, and He was able to bless me to be able to come back to the state of Florida and finish my whole career here. Play 14 years here. What I'm saying? It's been an incredible journey, incredible incredible time for me, starting at Fort Scott Community College, then making my way through Nebraska and now here. Each level taught me different things about life and different things about football, and I'm grateful for it.
And you're able to win a Super Bowl in the state of Florida. Talk to me about that 2020 season. Tom Brady comes to
Yeah.
town, you make the playoffs for the first time, win a Super Bowl on your home field. As a ninth-year vet at that point, what
Yeah.
was that season like for you, seeing everything come together?
Man, when we first got the call that Tom was coming, it was crazy. The hype was amazing. Everybody had tremendous hype. We went from to laughed about and to, Super Bowl favorites or Super Bowl contenders. But, obviously then COVID happened and, we had to deal with that thing. But I think that brought us together as a team, and then, obviously, Tom leading the charge, for us to be able to, accomplish the goal after, kind of being down as a program in the past, whatever years, and be able to be at the top of the mountain was incredible. That's something I'm gonna brag about for a long time. And I'm thankful to be a part of that.
And it's fair to say that Super Bowl will be remembered. The season for Tom Brady in Tampa, but the Super Bowl remembered for the performance of you in that Bucks defense. And
Sure.
elsewhere in Tampa this offseason, Levante, somebody drafted very high, very early in your tenure there, changes
Mhm.
teams for the first time. What's it going to be like for you to see longtime teammate Mike
Yeah.
Evans in a 49ers uniform this season?
Yeah, it's gonna be different. It's gonna be kind of odd, but as always, man, me and Mike relationship goes beyond football. And, no matter what, I had his back. When he told me when I found out what was going on, I was just, root the best for him. You know what I'm saying? Mike gonna be Mike, man. Mike gonna continue to dominate, and Mike gonna continue to be the best receiver in this game. And most importantly, man, Mike gonna be the best person that you will ever meet. And I'm sure those guys gonna get a chance to taste that and see that. And kind of, happy for those guys because they get a chance to, see Mike. You know what I'm saying? They get a chance to, really get to know him and they get a chance to see what he brings to the game of football. But it's all love, no matter what, man. Mike is like a little brother to me. For me to be able to watch him grow and build him throughout his football journey, it was incredible to see.
All right, I got to ask because my calendar says March. You're beloved in Lincoln.
Mhm.
Cornhusker through.
So when you look at Jadarian Price, where we say, hey, he's not multidimensional, that kick return ability is excellent. And as a pure runner, he has few peers.
And few peers in that per capita explosive play market. 21% of Price's carries went for 10 or more yards, third best of any running back in the nation last year. Field, let's dive a little deeper into your latest mock. Take us through the first few picks for the teams at the top, starting with the Raiders.
The only pick I can say with absolute certainty is the Raiders taking Fernando Mendoza, number 1 overall. The quarterback out of Indiana won the Heisman Trophy this past season. Clutch production, one of his friends against top 10 teams this past season. 6 games, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He had 3 separate games against top 10 ranked teams at the time in which he completed 85% of his passes or more. He was excellent wire to wire for Indiana. They go to defense next, and that would be Ohio State's Caden McDonald. Big nose tackle would be an ideal fit for Rob Leonard, the new defensive coordinator for the Raiders. Interior defensive line, an area to address. Let's go to the Jets, Jets, who got 4 letters in their name. They also have 4 picks in the top 44. They start with David Bailey, number 2 overall, going with a pass rusher out of Texas Tech, who had 14.5 sacks this past season. No player had more in the FBS. 16, they grabbed Mekhi Lemon, the Biletnikoff winner out of USC. He plays much bigger than his stature. He is an absolute maven with the football after the catch. 2 players in round 2, Colton Hood from Tennessee, and also Kristen Miller, defensive tackle from Georgia. Finally, the Cardinals make a little bit of a splash, not just at number 3 overall, where they get Arvell Reese from Ohio State. Plenty of upside for this green and raw pass rusher, but he had a pressure rate of nearly 20% last season on the 97 pass rushing snaps he had. They also make a move to trade up for former Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Number 26 overall is where I have him landing in this mock. This would be like the Giants last year. Pass rusher early, quarterback later in round 1. I will be boots on the ground, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, tomorrow for Ty Simpson's pro day. Clearly the second best quarterback in this year's draft.
Need to give you a chance to exhale as you look at the Cardinals' depth chart. 33-year-old Jacoby Brissett back, started 12 games last year. They also brought in Gardner Minshew in free agency. Tim, how do you feel about Fields' proposed trade? Not dissimilar, like you said, to what the Giants did, getting back in the first round to get Jackson Dart. Yeah. Ty Simpson to the Cardinals here at 26?
Look, I do think Simpson makes sense as a first rounder. I also wouldn't be completely shocked if he were, to fall out of the first round. So I just would say that if you're a team that looks at him and thinks, yeah, he can be a starter in this league, and so it makes sense for us to move back into the first round. So to have that 5th-year option on a quarterback when, depending on where you go, let's say Arizona in this case, maybe you're not the starter this season. Maybe you're not the starter for the first half of the season. Who knows what it is? But in that, scenario, I think you need to have the 5th year to really know if you have your quarterback or not. So I think it makes sense. I do think there's a lot to like about Ty Simpson. I think, look, he's been coached well to play the position. I think he's got a lot of really, really good film, in terms of how it relates to the amount of the sample size that you have of him as a starter. I think he's a better athlete than people would think that he would be. He just doesn't, necessarily possess some of the things that you look for, in guys that typically on the first half of the first round, which is just, taller, bigger, more physically talented, bigger sample size, things that, give you more confidence that it is going to work out and work out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Tim, the number of starts has become a hot button topic of late. And, there are people that believe, and I understand this angle, that it's about evaluating whatever you have on tape. There's a lot of good that you see from Ty Simpson, but the larger the sample size, Tim, one of the other dynamics that comes into play is that the more a player has played, the more you understand what the real limitations are that might not show up in that small 15 college starts sample size. But of note here for Arizona, and why I believe this team can feel some level of confidence that they can strategically navigate the board in the first round, is that unlike most other positions on the roster, there's only a finite number of teams that are realistically going to be looking for a quarterback this early in the draft. We're talking about, obviously, Arizona, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe the New York Jets, maybe a team like the Miami Dolphins, although I am skeptical after the Malik Willis signing, maybe the Cleveland Browns. So it allows you to say, we got to get to this spot to have a pretty good chance to land the player that we believe in.
Yeah, and Field, I think you bring up an amazing point about the number of starts, right? Bill Parcells had his commandments. I think he wanted 45 starts or something like that.
Big number.
In his commandments. But yeah, and so we're not seeing that now. But I do like, and I would ask you if you think that when you just look at Anthony Richardson, you look at Trey Lance, you look at, even go back further, Mark Sanchez, or, I'm just curious is the feedback on it, because I would argue that it's just a guess when you don't have the number of starts in the data. Like, nobody knows. You might get it right. Ryan Tannehill, I think, had 17 starts. Yeah. It worked out. He ended up being a great player. But you don't know if you don't have that information.
That's my biggest thing, Tim, is I hear, like, I get it. We can only work with what we have. But when you have 35 starts like Fernando Mendoza, it's not just the stuff that we like that we have seen on tape. It's the stuff that we know by now. Like, these are the limitations for Fernando Mendoza. He's got to find a way to improve his in-pocket sort of awareness and not take as many sacks, even though he improved in that category this past season. For Ty Simpson, if he plays 30 games, there might be things that really haven't reared themselves up to this point that we would understand. We'd have to navigate at the next level. I think he's a really good player. He is inside my top 32 for prospects. He just is a trickier evaluation than a guy like Fernando because wire to wire last season, Fernando Mendoza in Indiana dominated the college football landscape. Not just the teams early in the schedule who they should have beaten. The teams late in the season that have been traditional powerhouses during the college football playoff era, Indiana took down all of them.
And if you're a team like Arizona taking a quarterback who you feel you may have to develop, only 15 college starts,
Yeah.
A realistic assessment about where you stand in a very deep FC West, you wouldn't imagine there's going to be an urge to rush him up the depth chart. You have, if there are holes in the game, you have time to develop behind Jacoby Brissett and or Gardner Minshew. Next on NFL Live, we would never mock field, but we do have questions about this latest mock. Could a surprise team grab a quarterback early? You don't want to miss this.